必死切磋た君の胸の奥まで届くようなメロディー奏でる
Great product, a product that we can all be proud of having to do with that elusive immigration problem. Whatever we do, I can promise you this. I will never forget that my first duty and ultimate loyalty is to you, the American people. Any reforms we make to our immigration system will be designed to improve your lives, make your community safer, and make our nation more prosperous and secure for generations to come. Thank you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Passive citizenship, Mr. President. You supported a passive citizenship last year, Mr. President.
I want to bring in now, after hearing the president, our panel of experts and strategists. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is here in New York, and Democratic strategist Anton Seawright joins us from Columbia, South Carolina. And Michael Singleton is a Republican political consultant. He joins us from D.C. Caitlin, I want to start with you. Maybe you can set the facts straight. It seems like to me that he's going to try and protect DACA recipients from being deported for 3 years in exchange to get money for that border wall. He wants McConnell to pass it. He's going to present it to the Senate. Where do you think this is going to go?
Well, Democrats have already said that this is not something that they are going to support, and for a couple of different reasons. One, they say that they want to open up the government before they have any talks on immigration. And they also argue that the reason that many DACA recipients are in limbo are because the president ended the program, putting it into the courts, and it's still kind of mired up in the courts. The Supreme Court just this past week saying they're not going to take it up yet, and now it will kind of remain for several months. They also argue that it doesn't include a path to citizenship, which is something that they have wanted, and that it is still very temporary. They wanted more permanent fixes. But the strategy from the White House and from some Republicans who support the president is that this is putting the ball back in the Democrats' court, that the president at least is showing that he is negotiating here or wanting to negotiate. So from a PR perspective, they think that this is something that will apply pressure to Democrats.
I want to tell you, just shortly before the president made that address, we did get a statement from Nancy Pelosi just minutes before, and the sense is, I don't want to read the whole thing, but it essentially says that called this a compilation of severally previously rejected initiatives, unacceptable, does not represent good faith, no starter, some of the words she's using. Bottom line is, even before hearing the proposal, she's saying no game here. Antoine Seawright, I want to ask you, you're a Democratic strategist. I mean, at some point, the Democrats have to give something, too, and it appears that they're not going to cave on this.
Well, I call this the old throw and attempt to release by the president, throw out a plan to attempt to release political pressure, because he's starting to feel it, as polls have indicated, and 2020 Dems who are up for re-election, where the map looks very favorable for Democrats, are starting to feel it as well. And what people know is that the federal government employees should not be held hostage because of this plan. I think what you also hear from some Republicans in the Senate, may not be publicly, but privately, they'll tell you, is that there's no education in the second kick of the mute. There have been proposals brought to this president that he asked for in the last Congress, bipartisan proposals that did a number of these things, and he turned around after pure public pressure from his base and rejected these proposals. And so he cannot negotiate in good faith. I think Speaker Pelosi and her caucus have been very clear. Let's reopen the federal government. Then we'll work towards comprehensive immigration reform to include the things to do a long-term fix, not these temporary fixes such as 3 years that we heard from this president. And the fact that this president has a short memory. We have a DACA crisis because of him. The TP crisis is because of him. This manufactured outrage is all because of him. I call it a crisis of convenience. The number of illegal people attempting to come into this country are down from 2 years ago. Where was this outrage? Where was this crisis? Where was all of this fierce urgency of now 2 years ago, when the numbers were higher than they are right now?
I want to turn now to Michael Singleton, who's a Republican political consultant. So Michael, I mean, the truth is this is going to head to the Senate, but it's probably likely not going to go anywhere in the House. What do you think?
Right. Well, yeah, it's not going to go anywhere in the House at all. And Caitlin articulately pointed this out when she was speaking accurately. I believe that what the president is attempting to do is throw in some things that Democrats do support and sort of force their hand to say, no, we will not support this piece of legislation because you continue to ask for the, I think he said $5.8 billion for the wall. That would give him the ability to say, look, I at least attempted to compromise here. But what's interesting about this, and Antoine alluded to this, last year in the Senate, when Democrats and Republicans came together, many of the things that the president spoke of in his remarks were in what both sides attempted to bring together last year. And the president first said he was going to support it, and then days later he came out and said he was not going to support it after getting pressure from some in the conservative base. The president also said some things that were inaccurate. He talked about drugs pouring into the country. There's a trial going on right now in New York with El Chapo, where former drug smugglers stated an overwhelming majority of drugs that are brought into the country come through legal ports of entry. The president also talked about the failure of previous administrations. That was also inaccurate. President Obama was actually coined deporter-in-chief because he deported so many individuals during his 8-year tenure. Let's also keep in mind in 2006, the Strong Fence Act passed by both Republicans and Democrats that essentially placed 647 miles of fencing along the border. Well, from 2010 and 2015, data from U.S. Border and Customs Patrol indicated that that fencing was breached over 9,000 times, which cost taxpayers millions of dollars. So what the president is talking about, one, just does not work effectively, and two, you would likely have to utilize eminent domain for some of those places, which most Republicans will not support, and he has yet to address the continued maintenance costs for something that he's talking about. So I think there are a lot of holes here in the president's remarks that are just going to make Democrats not be willing to come up with a compromise for him.
Sure, Michael, it's interesting. You know, I mentioned you're a Republican political strategist. To hear your take on that. Ann Coulter weighed in, another conservative who says, and this is what she had to say just a few minutes ago, 100 miles of border wall in exchange for amnesty, millions of illegals. So if we grant citizenship to 1 billion foreigners, maybe we can get a full border wall. Trump proposes amnesty. We voted for Trump and got Jeb. Caitlin, we also know that in the House, Nancy Pelosi says there's about 6 different bills they're trying to push forward to reopen. Any luck with that?
Well, they have been, the House under Pelosi now is controlled by Democrats. They have been putting forward bills and passing them over the past week or so to reopen portions of the government, fund portions of the government. They also want to apply pressure back on Republicans by putting forward measures that the Senate has already passed before Trump kind of backtracked on the border wall and said that this is going to be his position. This is before the government shutdown. So a lot of both sides trying to put pressure on the other. But the Republicans in the Senate have already said, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Majority Leader, that they're not going to pass anything that the president himself won't sign. So we're still kind of in this limbo position with both sides, at least at this point, pretty firm in their positions. Now, the president providing this today, we'll see what Democrats come back with. But for now, they're saying that this is not sufficient. This is not something that they could support. And remember, the president needs Democrats for anything that will get through Congress, not only because Democrats control the House, but because they don't have a supermajority in the Senate. So they still need Democratic votes in the Senate. You're already hearing from people like Dick Durbin, a leader in the Democrats on the Senate side, say that he's not going to support this.
So, Antoine, I want to ask you, Democrats, somebody needs to come to the middle of the road, right? They've got to get together at some point. How do you make that happen?
Well, I think first and foremost, reopening the government. And I think you have to crawl before you walk, as we say down here in the South. And I think crawling in this case is reopening the federal government. Keep in mind, even though Congress has a low approval rating, they can walk and chew gum at the same time. And so I think Republicans in the Senate, particularly 2020 Republicans are probably sooner rather than later will say, you know what, let's come together and put our federal employees back to work. It's so hypocritical of the Republican Party to talk about being American first when 800,000 American federal workers are laid off and held hostage because of the president's campaign promise of building a wall that Mexico was supposed to pay for. So I think that's the first step. And then from there, I think you will probably see some reasonable, moderate Republicans and some Democrats say, come together, you know what, let's put some money for border security like we did last year with the $1.6 billion allocated for border security. By the way, the president has spent less than 10% of that up to this point. And you'll start to see piece by piece, bit by bit, a plan to work towards an immigration reform package to include border security, to include something that will take care of dreamers, to include fixing the many holes that we have in our immigration system that people can live with in the long term, not just the short term.
I want to also turn to Shermichael Singleton. Shermichael, our understanding is probably within the next 30 minutes or so, Republican leadership will be gathering together to conference and sort of discuss this plan. Just based on Twitter, on the reaction from conservatives on the right, this did not go down well. They were very upset about this, the way this was handled with DACA and what was being exchanged. What do you think the Republican leadership needs to do in that meeting this afternoon?
Well, look, I think Mitch McConnell has to shore up some of those more moderate senators, such as Susan Collins, and there are others that are up for re-election, as Antoine alluded to. In 2020, there are, I believe, 18 or a little bit more than 18 Republican senators up for re-election. In some of those states, Donald Trump did not win by a large margin, and in some states, he didn't win at all. If you look at the Senate map, at least currently, Democrats, I would say, one could argue, are favored to take the Senate. And so Mitch McConnell has to figure out a way to keep those senators at bay, and I'm not certain how much longer he will have before he has to go to the president and say, Mr. President, I just don't have the support in the Senate. We have to compromise. I think the burden here is more so on Republicans, politically speaking, than it is on Democrats. I mean, over a majority of the American people, according to every legitimate poll, believe that this is a result of President Trump and Republicans' inability and unwillingness to compromise with Democrats. So again, politically, I don't think the odds are in favor of Republicans. And Mitch McConnell, who has seen his poll numbers in his own home state decrease significantly, is also thinking about the political outcome for him, where the president is far more popular in Kentucky than Mitch McConnell. So when you think about the political dynamics here, you begin to really see why McConnell is doing some of the things that he's doing, but you also see why the president is being such a hardliner here. You read the quote from Ann Coulter. You also have to think about folks over at Fox News, for example, or some folks on conservative radio who are going to say this is not conservative enough. If the president doesn't stand by this, we cannot continue to support him. So everyone, I would argue, both sides are looking at the political dynamics here. But again, I think Republicans have far more to lose than Democrats.
Sure, Michael, before you go, I do want to ask you, we were talking sort of about the reaction from conservatives on Twitter, some well-known conservatives who are upset about this DACA deal, potential deal. Do you think that this potentially could be the president who could do something significant in immigration reform that no other president has been able to do?
I don't think so. Donald Trump, and I hate to say this, but he has proven himself not to be a trustworthy person. And I think that's why Nancy Pelosi is really hesitant to try to negotiate with him. As I mentioned earlier, remember last year, Republicans and Democrats came together in the Senate to come up with comprehensive immigration reform. The president first said he was going to agree to what they proposed, and then only days later completely flipped the script, and you saw it completely unravel. So I think from the Democrats' perspective, one, they don't have a mandate to work with him, and two, they have to ask themselves, can we even trust what the president tells us? And I think history proves they can't.
Sure, Michael, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Sure, Michael Singleton, Antoine Seawright, and of course our very own Caitlin Huey-Burns. Thank you all three for your analysis.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It has been a busy afternoon. We've got a lot more news to get to. We're going to take a quick break. Much more news ahead. Stay with us.
それも承知している。確か彼らは自らを鬼と名乗っていたが、信じているわけではない。
いえ、鬼と言われた方が妥当でしょう。3人が3人とも人間離れした使い手ということですし、それなのに人の世界では全く名が通っていない。そんなことは本来ありえないことです。
三男さんがそういうことを言うのって珍しいですよね。
彼らが人でないことはあなたたちもよくお分かりの様子ですね。ならば話は早いです。実を申せばこの私も人ではありません。彼らと同じ鬼なのです。本来の名は千姫と申します。
私は千姫様に代々仕えております忍びの家の者でございます。
なるほど。初対面だっつうのにやけに愛想がいいと思ってたが、お前の狙いは花から俺を通じて新選組の情報を仕入れることか。
さあ、何のことにござりましょう。
なんだよ土方さん、知り合いなのか。
よく見ろ新八、君菊さんだ。島原で会った時と風体は違うが顔は同じだろ。
この国には古来より鬼という生き物が住んでいました。幕府や諸藩の高い位にある者は皆知っていたことです。ほとんどの鬼たちは人間と関わらず、ただ静かに暮らすことを望んでいました。ですが鬼の強力な力に目をつけた時の権力者は自分たちに力を貸すよう求めました。多くの者は拒みました。人間たちの争いや彼らの野心になぜ自分たちが加担しなければならないのかと。ですがそうして断った場合、圧倒的な兵力で押し寄せてきて村落を滅ぼされることさえあったのです。鬼の一族は次第に各地に散り散りになり、人目を避けて暮らすようになりました。人との交わりが進んだ今では純潔に近い鬼はそう多くはありません。
それがあの風間たちだということかな。
今西国で最も血筋が良い家といえば薩摩藩の後ろ盾を得ている風間家です。棟梁は風間千景。そして東国で最も大きな家は雪村家。あなたの家よ。雪村家の鬼たちが隠れ住んでいた里は人間たちの手によって滅ぼされたと聞いています。ですが彼女は雪村一族の生き残りではないか。私はそう考えています。あなたには特別に強い鬼の力を感じるの。 わかる限りではあるけど、お菊にもあなたの家のことを調べさせたわ。
信じられるのも無理はありませんが、まず間違いないかと。